Ha ha! I'm not falling for that downgraded screen.
What it do, bruh? Talk of the town, Nintendo, Doc Trey, still holding it down, still make the best games, and you know this, bro. It's the truth. You don't like it, you can have that seatbelt.
So ever since it was confirmed that the Switch 2 would not use an OLED screen, or actually even before it was even confirmed, when it was leaked that the Nintendo Switch 2 would use a 1080p LCD or LED screen, people have claimed that they would not buy the system until the inevitable Switch 2 OLED version. But the question is it actually inevitable? But before we get things started, we're still on the road to 20,000 subscribers. So if you're into Nintendo Switch 2 content, specifically intelligent Nintendo Switch 2 content, and you're not yet subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you think in the comments section about the topic, and also if you like the video, of course, thumbs the video up. So I see a lot of people assuming and are with the stance that they refuse to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 until the inevitable Nintendo Switch 2 OLED comes out. But the question is, what if there never is a Switch 2 OLED? Because people are just assuming, just because the Switch 1 had an OLED, that the Switch 2 will also have an OLED version. But what if the OLED version was just an experiment and a one and done by Nintendo? Now, I'm not saying that there will never be a Switch 2 OLED, but maybe assuming there will be one might not be the brightest idea. You guys have to remember, a lot of the features that Nintendo has hyped up of the Switch 2 are upgrades to both the Switch 2's LCD and even the Switch 2's OLED. So with the Nintendo Switch 2 screen, you're going from 720p to 1080p. You also have HDR support. You also have VRR support. You also have support for 120 up to 120 frames per second. If Nintendo were to come out with a Switch 2 OLED, the expectation would be that all of those features would carry over in addition to it being an OLED screen. So we're talking a 1080p OLED screen with VRR support, with HDR, and with 120 frames per second. And yes, HDR, VRR, and 120 frames per second would actually really have to be present in an OLED screen for the Switch 2, because Nintendo specifically hyped up those features, and that's the thing. Like, they put so much emphasis on those features, they can't come out with an OLED version of the Switch 2 that is missing those features, especially when there's games that are taking advantage of those features. So you got to ask yourself, the Switch 2, even with an LCD or LED, is already pretty expensive. Now imagine what the cost of that would be, making that same screen with those same features an OLED screen. Also, you need to factor in the fact that the cost of these components could possibly go higher. Like, people are expecting that the Nintendo Switch 2 could potentially be priced higher than it currently is. Now, even if there were a Switch 2 OLED model to come out, if we're going by history, it won't even be the first revision of the Switch 2. If we're going by history, usually the first revision for Nintendo is not to make it bigger, but to make, or not to make it bigger, or not to make an improved version. Really, it's to make a lower cost, smaller version. So if we're going by history, the first revision for the Switch 2 would be a Switch 2 Lite. And that would be at least 2 years from now. And if a Switch 2 OLED comes out, it's not going to come out anytime around the Switch 2 Lite, So that would be at least 3 to 4 years from now. So you're telling me you're really going to miss out on all these Switch 2 games and exclusives, and you're going to wait until 2029 to maybe get a Switch 2 OLED. I mean, okay. I don't know. I still think a lot of these people that's saying, "Oh, I'll just wait till the Switch 2 OLED," they're just saying that. And once these good games come out, all these exclusives come out, they're gonna fold and they're gonna buy one. Now, again, I'm not saying that a Switch 2 OLED is never gonna come out, but what I'm telling you is it's not guaranteed. Now, we had this article earlier saying that Samsung would like or is pushing, apparently, for Nintendo to have an OLED version of the Switch 2 that they could supply the screen. But Samsung pushing Nintendo or suggesting to Nintendo something is not the same thing as Nintendo actually considering or actually going for it. So, while I guess it would be nice for there to be a Switch 2 OLED, one, it's not coming out anytime soon. And two, it may, like the Switch Pro, never come out. There's a thing called cost. Like Nintendo's already being kind of nervous about the cost of the Switch 2. A Switch 2 OLED is going to be just that much more expensive. Now, by that time, we don't know. The cost of parts could be going down, or it could even be going higher, which we've seen what's going on with this economy. So, yeah, I wouldn't assume that there's going to be a Switch 2 OLED. There could be, but it's not really the guarantee that people think it is. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Are you really waiting for a Switch 2 OLED to jump in on Switch 2, or do you already have a Switch 2 and plan to upgrade to a Switch 2 OLED when it comes out, or if it comes out, I should say? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to compare the two screens between the Switch 2 and the Switch OLED, make sure you do it like I did and actually compare both of them in person, because these picture comparisons online are not accurate at all. And they would have you believe that the difference between the Switch 2 screen and the OLED screen is bigger than the difference between the Switch OLED and the regular Switch screen. Like, it's not like that. So if you're going to compare, make sure you do it for yourself in person.